Imagine walking through a moonlit forest 50,000 years ago. The silence is broken only by your own footsteps and the distant call of unknown creatures. Suddenly, you hear a low, rumbling hiss that seems to come from the very earth itself. Your blood runs cold as you realize you're not alone. Somewhere in the darkness, a pair of ancient eyes is watching you, calculating your every move. This isn't the stuff of nightmares. This was reality for our ancestors. They shared this planet with predators so massive, so perfectly engineered for killing, that a single encounter could mean the difference between survival and becoming someone else's dinner. These weren't just big animals. They were evolutionary masterpieces, honed by millions of years of natural selection into the most efficient killing machines the world has ever known. Tonight, we're going to meet the predators that haunted our ancestors' dreams and shaped human evolution itself. These are the creatures that forced our species to become smarter, faster, and more cunning just to survive another day. From giant lizards that could swallow a man whole to saber-toothed cats that turned hunting into an art form, these predators didn't just threaten individual humans, they threatened the very future of our species. But here's what will blow your mind. Many of these apex predators didn't go extinct because of natural disasters or climate change. They disappeared because of us. Our ancestors didn't just survive encounters with these monsters. They actually drove many of them to extinction. The question is, how did small, relatively weak primates manage to outlast predators that had dominated the planet for millions of years? The answer to that question reveals one of the most incredible survival stories in the history of life on Earth. This is the story of the most dangerous predators humans ever faced, and how our species managed to survive when everything else wanted us dead. Chapter 1. When Giants Ruled the Earth. To understand the true terror our ancestors faced, we need to travel back to a time when the Earth was populated by creatures that would make today's most dangerous predators look like house pets. This was the Pleistocene epoch, a period spanning from about 2.6 million to 11,700 years ago, when megafauna animals of extraordinary size dominated ecosystems across the globe. Picture this: woolly mammoths with tusks longer than school buses trampled across frozen tundra. Cave bears twice the size of modern grizzlies ruled European forests. Giant ground sloths as large as elephants browsed on vegetation in South America. Short-faced bears that stood 12 feet tall on their hind legs prowled the plains of North America. This wasn't just a world of big animals. It was a world where being big was the key to survival. The Pleistocene wasn't some distant, alien world. It was recent enough that our direct ancestors lived through it, developing the psychological and physical traits that define humanity today. Every aspect of human behavior, from our fear of the dark to our instinctive tendency to seek shelter in caves and build fires, can be traced back to this era when being human meant being prey. The climate during the Pleistocene was characterized by dramatic swings between ice ages and warmer interglacial periods. These climate changes drove the evolution of megafauna, creating selection pressures that favored large body size. Bigger animals could better regulate their body temperature during cold periods, store more energy during times of scarcity, and travel longer distances in search of food and suitable habitat. But among all these giants, some stood out not just for their size, but for their absolutely terrifying hunting capabilities. These were the apex predators, the creatures that even other giants feared. They had evolved over millions of years into perfect killing machines, each one specialized for a particular type of hunting that made them nearly unstoppable. In the dense forests of Europe and Asia lurked the cave lion, Pantherispelia, a massive feline that made today's African lions look like kittens. These prehistoric predators weighed up to 700 pounds, nearly twice the size of modern lions, and possessed a bite force that could crush the skull of a woolly rhinoceros. Their roar could be heard for miles, serving as both a territorial warning and a promise of death to anything that dared challenge them. Cave lions weren't just bigger versions of modern lions. They were fundamentally different creatures, adapted for hunting the massive prey that dominated Pleistocene Europe. Their skulls were broader and more robust, designed to deliver crushing bites to thick-skulled megafauna. Their limbs were more muscular, capable of bringing down prey animals weighing several tons. Their social structure was also different. While modern lions live in prides, cave lions appear to have been more solitary, with males maintaining large territories that they defended against all intruders. Stalking through the grasslands and forests of the Americas was Smilodon, the legendary saber-toothed cat, with canine teeth that grew up to 7 inches long. These predators had evolved the most specialized killing apparatus in mammalian history. They didn't just bite their prey, they delivered surgical strikes to the throat and major blood vessels, causing massive trauma that would bring down even the largest prey animals in minutes. Smilodon represented the pinnacle of specialized predation. Their entire anatomy was built around those incredible saber teeth. Their jaw muscles were positioned differently from modern cats, allowing them to open their mouths to an incredible 120-degree angle, nearly twice as wide as a modern lion. Their neck muscles were enormously powerful, designed to drive those saber teeth deep into prey with devastating force. Their forelimbs were incredibly robust, evolved to grapple with struggling prey and hold them still for the killing bite. But perhaps most terrifying of all was a predator that combined massive size with intelligence, stealth, and venom. In the harsh landscapes of Australia roamed Megalania prisca, a monitor lizard so large it could have used a modern Komodo dragon as a snack. At over 20 feet long and weighing as much as a small car, Megalania wasn't just the largest terrestrial lizard ever to exist. It was a walking nightmare that perfectly embodied every human fear about reptilian predators. These weren't just big animals that happened to be dangerous. They were evolutionary arms races made flesh, predators that had been refined by millions of years of natural selection into the most efficient killers the planet had ever produced. Every aspect of their anatomy was optimized for hunting, their muscles for explosive power, their teeth for maximum damage, their senses for detecting prey from impossible distances. What made these predators truly terrifying wasn't just their individual capabilities. It was how they worked together to create ecosystems where death lurked around every corner. A human ancestor venturing out to find food might encounter a pack of dire wolves in the morning, avoid a short-faced bear in the afternoon, and then stumble into the territory of a cave lion as night fell. Survival required constant vigilance, split-second decision-making, and a level of intelligence that most animals simply didn't possess. The fossil record from this period paints a picture of unprecedented carnage. Bone beds across the globe tell stories of mass predation events where multiple species of megafauna fell victim to these apex predators. Cave deposits in Europe contain the remains of hundreds of animals, many showing the characteristic bite marks and bone damage that indicate they were killed by cave lions or cave bears. In North America, tar pits preserve the skeletons of countless animals that died while trying to escape from saber-toothed cats and short-faced bears. This was the world that shaped human evolution. Every aspect of our modern psychology, from our fear of the dark to our tendency to see faces and shadows, can be traced back to this era when being prey was a full-time job. Our ancestors didn't just have to find food and shelter. They had to do it while being hunted by creatures that were bigger, stronger, and often smarter than they were. The development of human intelligence wasn't just an accident of evolution. It was a direct response to the constant threat of predation. Our big brains evolved because they were the only advantage we had against creatures that could tear us apart with their bare claws. Our ability to use tools, create fire, and work together in complex social groups all emerged as survival strategies in a world where being human meant being hunted. The fact that we're here today, telling this story, is testament to the incredible ingenuity and resilience of our prehistoric ancestors. They didn't just survive in a world filled with monsters, they thrived, eventually becoming the most successful predator the planet has ever known. But that success came at a cost and understanding. That cost requires us to look these ancient monsters in the eye and imagine what it was like to be human when humans were still prey. Chapter 2. The dragon that was Ariel of all the predators that terrorized early humans. None embodied pure nightmare fuel, quite like Megalania prisca. This wasn't just a big lizard. This was a 20-foot-long, half-ton killing machine that combined the stealth of a crocodile, the venom of a snake, and the intelligence of a modern monitor lizard into a package that would have made even the most fearless human warrior soil himself in terror. To understand what made Megalania so terrifying, we need to picture the Australian landscape 50,000 years ago. This wasn't the arid continent we know today, but a land of vast forests, sprawling grasslands, and abundant water sources. It was a prehistoric paradise, at least until you realized what was lurking in the shadows. Australia during the Pleistocene was home to some of the most bizarre and dangerous megafauna ever to exist. Giant wombats the size of cars grazed in open meadows. Marsupial lions with retractable claws, like switchblades, stalked through dense forests. Enormous flightless birds with beaks like battle axes dominated the plains. But ruling over all of them was Megalania, the apex predator that even other apex predators feared. The story of Megalania's discovery reads like a paleontological thriller. In 1859, Sir Richard Owen, the brilliant but temperamental British scientist who coined the term dinosaur, received a mysterious package from colleagues in Australia. Inside were 3 large vertebrae that had been found along the Condomin River in Queensland, mixed in with the bones of various marsupials. Owen immediately recognized that these weren't mammal bones. The vertebrae belonged to a reptile a reptile of impossible size. Based on these fragments alone, Owen calculated that the creature they came from would have been at least 20 feet long, possibly longer. He named it Megalania, meaning great roamer, though it was later reclassified as Varanus priscus when scientists realized it belonged to the monitor lizard family. What Owen couldn't have imagined from those few bones was the true horror of what Megalania represented. As more fossils were discovered across Australia, a picture emerged of a predator so perfectly adapted for killing that it seemed almost designed by some malevolent intelligence specifically to terrorize early humans. Megalania wasn't just a scaled-up version of a modern monitor lizard. It was something fundamentally different. A creature that had evolved in isolation on the Australian continent into something that defied every rule about what reptiles were supposed to be capable of. Modern monitor lizards are impressive predators, but they're relatively lightweight and agile creatures that rely on speed and stealth to catch prey. Megalania was built like a tank with teeth. The size estimates for Megalania have been debated for decades, but the most recent research suggests an average length of around 18 to 20 feet, with the largest specimens possibly reaching 23 feet or more. That's longer than a city bus. But length was just part of the story. Megalania was also incredibly massive, with a body weight estimated at 1,200 to 1,500 pounds. That's 3 times heavier than the largest Komodo dragons alive today. This massive size brought with it incredible strength. Megalania's limbs were thick and powerful, capable of supporting its enormous weight while still allowing for surprising bursts of speed. Its tail alone would have weighed several hundred pounds and could have been used as a devastating weapon, capable of knocking a human off their feet or breaking bones with a single swing. But it was Megalania's head that truly revealed its nature as the ultimate predator. The skull was massive and heavily built, with powerful jaw muscles that could generate a bite force. Estimated at over 11,000 pounds per square inch, that's more than double the bite force of a great white shark. The teeth were curved, serrated, daggers designed for slicing through flesh and bone. Each tooth was continuously replaced throughout the animal's life, ensuring that Megalania always had a full set of razor-sharp weapons at its disposal. The jaw structure of Megalania reveals something particularly sinister about how it killed its prey. Unlike crocodiles, which have relatively simple, conical teeth designed for gripping and crushing, Megalania had blade-like teeth with serrated edges that worked like biological saw blades. When it bit down on prey, those teeth didn't just puncture, they sliced, creating massive wounds that would cause catastrophic blood loss. But the teeth were just the beginning of Megalania's killing arsenal. Like modern monitor lizards, Megalania almost certainly possessed venom glands in its lower jaw. This venom wasn't like the neurotoxic poison of snakes, which kills by shutting down the nervous system. Instead, it was a hemotoxin cocktail of enzymes and proteins specifically designed to prevent blood clotting and cause massive internal bleeding. The implications of this are terrifying. A bite from Megalania, even if it didn't immediately kill its victim, would have been essentially a death sentence. The venom would prevent the wounds from healing, causing continuous bleeding that would gradually weaken the prey animal until it collapsed from blood loss. Megalania could afford to be patient, following the scent trail of its dying victim for hours, or even days until it finally succumbed. This hunting strategy would have been particularly devastating against early humans. Unlike the large megafauna that Megalania typically hunted, humans were small and relatively fragile. A single bite would have been enough to deliver a fatal dose of venom, and even if the human managed to escape the initial attack, they would have been doomed to a slow, agonizing death unless their companions could somehow stop the bleeding, which would have been nearly impossible with stone age medical knowledge. Megalania's sensory capabilities were equally impressive. Modern monitor lizards have excellent eyesight and can detect movement from hundreds of yards away. They also possess forked tongues that function as chemical detectors, allowing them to track prey by scent with incredible precision. A large monitor lizard can follow a scent trail that stays old, discriminating between different prey species and even individual animals. Scaled up to Megalania's size, these sensory capabilities would have made it an incredibly efficient hunter. It could have detected the scent of a human camp from miles away, then tracked the inhabitants with the patience and persistence of a serial killer. The idea of being hunted by a creature that could follow your every movement, appearing and disappearing like a scaly ghost, would have been psychologically devastating for early humans. The hunting behavior of modern monitor lizards gives us clues about how Megalania might have operated. Large monitors are ambush predators that combine stealth with explosive bursts of speed. They're capable of remaining motionless for hours, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. When they do attack, they move with shocking speed, using their powerful legs to launch themselves at prey like guided missiles. Megalania would have been even more terrifying because of its intelligence. Monitor lizards are among the most intelligent reptiles on Earth, capable of complex problem-solving and learning from experience. They can remember the locations of food sources, recognize individual prey animals, and even use tools in some circumstances. A creature with Megalania's size and intelligence would have been capable of sophisticated hunting strategies that went far beyond simple ambush predation. Imagine a Megalania that had learned the daily routines of a human tribe, knowing exactly when and where they went to gather water or collect food. Picture it using its intelligence to set traps, blocking escape routes or herding humans toward areas where they could be easily cornered. The psychological warfare alone would have been devastating, knowing that somewhere out there was a creature smart enough to outthink you and big enough to eat you whole. The fossil evidence suggests that Megalania was a highly successful predator that dominated Australian ecosystems for over 1 million years. Bite marks on the bones of various megafauna species show that Megalania was capable of taking down prey much larger than itself, including giant wombats, massive kangaroos, and even other predators like marsupial lions. But perhaps the most chilling evidence comes from Aboriginal Australian folklore. Indigenous stories passed down through thousands of years describe encounters with giant lizards that match the description of Megalania remarkably closely. These stories speak of monstrous reptiles that could swallow entire tribes, creatures so fearsome that they shaped the very landscape through their movements. While these stories are obviously mythologized and exaggerated, they suggest that Aboriginal Australians retain cultural memories of encounters with Megalania. The fact that these stories persist after tens of thousands of years speaks to the profound psychological impact that these encounters must have had on early human populations. The extinction of Megalania around 40,000 to 50,000 years ago coincides almost exactly with the arrival of humans in Australia. This timing is unlikely to be a coincidence. While climate change certainly played a role in the extinction of Australian megafauna, the impact of human hunting and habitat modification was probably the final nail in the coffin for creatures like Megalania. But how did early humans, armed with nothing but stone tools and fire, manage to drive such a formidable predator to extinction? The answer lies in the unique advantages that human intelligence provided in this prehistoric arms race between predator and prey. Chapter 3. The perfect killing Amaseange Megalania was the stuff of reptilian nightmares. Then Smilodon fatalis was the embodiment of mammalian terror perfected. Known to most people as the saber-toothed tiger, though it wasn't actually a tiger. Et al. Smilodon represents one of evolution's most extreme experiments in predatory specialization. These cats didn't just hunt their prey. They assassinated it with surgical precision that would make a modern special forces operative weep with envy. To understand the true horror of encountering a Smilodon, we need to transport ourselves to the Americas between 2.5 million and 10,000 years ago. This was a continent teeming with megafauna that would dwarf anything alive today. Massive ground sloths the size of elephants browsed on vegetation. Giant beavers built dams with logs that took multiple men to lift. Enormous bison with horns spans wider than a car dominated the Great Plains. And stalking through this prehistoric wonderland was Smilodon, a predator so perfectly adapted for killing that it seemed almost alien in its efficiency. Smilodon wasn't just one species, but an entire genus of saber-toothed cats that evolved in South America before spreading north when the Panamanian land bridge connected the continents. The largest and most fearsome species was Smilodon populator, which lived in South America and was roughly the size of a modern tiger. But it was the North American species, Smilodon fatalis, that would have posed the greatest threat to early human populations migrating south from Asia. At first glance, Smilodon fatalis might not have seemed as imposing as some other Pleistocene predators. Standing about 3 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing between 350 and 620 pounds, it was roughly comparable in size to a modern lion. But size was never the point with Smilodon. This was a predator that had traded raw physical power for something far more terrifying: absolute perfection in the art of killing. The most obvious feature of any Smilodon was, of course, those incredible canine teeth. These weren't just big teeth. They were evolutionary masterpieces, curved daggers of enamel and dentin that could grow up to 7 inches long. To put that in perspective, That's longer than a large kitchen knife. These teeth were so large that a Smilodon couldn't even close its mouth completely when they were fully grown. But the size of the teeth was just the beginning of their sophistication. Each saber tooth was flattened from side to side, creating sharp cutting edges along both the front and back surfaces. The teeth were also slightly recurved, angling backward toward the throat, which meant that once they penetrated flesh, they would tend to drive deeper rather than sliding out. The serrated edges worked like biological saw blades, slicing through muscle, blood vessels, and even bone with devastating efficiency. The entire skull of Smilodon was redesigned around these incredible weapons. The jaw muscles were positioned and sized to deliver maximum force during the killing bite, while the skull itself was reinforced to handle the enormous stresses involved. Most remarkably, Smilodon could open its jaws to an angle of 120 degrees, nearly twice as wide as a modern lion. This extreme gape was necessary to clear those massive canines and position them for the perfect killing strike. But having 7-inch daggers for teeth presented some serious engineering challenges. How do you use such weapons without breaking them? How do you deliver a killing bite without getting your own teeth stuck in the victim? Evolution's solution was to completely reimagine how a predator should be built. Smilodon's neck was incredibly powerful, packed with muscles that could drive those saber teeth deep into prey with tremendous force. But more importantly, the entire front end of the animal was built like a grappling machine. The shoulders were massive and heavily muscled, while the forelimbs were among the most robust of any cat that ever lived. These weren't the lean, agile limbs of a modern big cat, but the powerful grappling arms of a wrestler. This body plan reveals exactly how Smilodon hunted, and it's terrifying in its efficiency. Unlike modern cats, which typically kill by suffocation biting, the throat and crushing the windpipe Smilodon was designed for precision killing through massive trauma. The hunting sequence would have been like watching a perfect execution. First, Smilodon would use its powerful forelimbs to wrestle prey to the ground and pin it in place. Those massive shoulder muscles weren't just for show. They were capable of controlling and immobilizing animals much larger than the cat itself. Once the prey was secured, Smilodon would position its head carefully, open those jaws to their maximum extent, and then drive the saber teeth deep into the victim's throat. The killing bite targeted specific anatomical structures with surgical precision. Those curved saber teeth were designed to slice through the major blood vessels of the neck, the carotid arteries and jugular veins, while simultaneously penetrating the windpipe. The result was catastrophic damage that would cause death within minutes through a combination of blood loss and asphyxiation. What made this hunting style so terrifying was its reliability. Modern big cats miss their killing bites relatively frequently, leading to prolonged struggles that can result in injury to the predator. Smilodon's method was essentially foolproof. Once those saber teeth found their target, the prey was dead there. There was no possibility of escape or recovery. But this specialized hunting style came with a cost. Those incredible saber teeth were also incredibly fragile. Unlike the robust, cone-shaped canines of modern cats, Smilodon's teeth were thin and sharp, optimized for cutting rather than gripping. This meant they could be broken relatively easily if used improperly. A Smilodon with broken saber teeth would have been doomed to starvation. This fragility helps explain why Smilodon evolved such a specific hunting technique. The elaborate grappling behavior wasn't just about controlling prey. It was about protecting those precious teeth from damage. Every aspect of the hunt was carefully choreographed to ensure that the saber teeth only encountered soft tissue, never bone or other hard structures that might cause them to break. The fossil record provides abundant evidence of Smilodon's hunting prowess. Bone beds across North and South America contain the remains of numerous large mammals, showing the characteristic puncture wounds and slicing damage that could only have been inflicted by saber teeth. These sites paint a picture of incredibly successful predators that dominated their ecosystems for over 2 million years. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about Smilodon wasn't its individual hunting ability. It was evidence that these cats may have been social hunters. Unlike most modern cats, which are solitary predators, Smilodon appears to have lived and hunted in groups. This conclusion comes from several lines of evidence, including the discovery of multiple individuals preserved together in tar pits and the analysis of tooth wear patterns that suggest cooperative feeding behavior. The implications of social hunting Smilodons are absolutely terrifying. A single saber-toothed cat was already the perfect killing machine. A coordinated pack of them would have been virtually unstoppable. They could have taken down the largest prey animals through coordinated attacks, with some individuals acting as grapplers while others delivered the killing bites. For early humans migrating into the Americas, encountering a pride of Smilodons would have been a nightmare scenario. These cats were specifically adapted for hunting large mammals, and while humans were smaller than their typical prey, they would have been easy targets for predators with such sophisticated killing techniques. The psychological impact of living alongside Smilodons cannot be overstated. These weren't just dangerous animals. They were predators that seemed almost supernaturally skilled at killing. The precision and efficiency of their hunting methods would have been unlike anything early humans had encountered before. Watching a Smilodon in action would have been like watching death itself made manifest. Archaeological evidence suggests that early Americans developed specific strategies for dealing with saber-toothed cats. Cave paintings and petroglyphs show humans hunting in large groups, using fire and coordinated tactics to drive predators away from their camps. Spear points from this period show evidence of design modifications that would have been specifically useful against large cats' broader heads for maximum tissue damage and specialized hafting techniques for weapons that might need to be used in close quarters combat. But perhaps the most telling evidence of the impact Smilodons had on early human populations comes from the timing of their extinction. Like many other megafauna predators, Smilodon disappeared from the fossil record around 10,000 years ago, coinciding with both climate change and the establishment of stable human populations across the Americas. The extinction of Smilodon marked the end of one of evolution's most successful predatory lineages. For over 20 million years, saber-toothed cats had dominated ecosystems across the globe, repeatedly evolving the same basic body plan in response to the presence of large prey animals. The disappearance of the last saber-toothed cats represents not just the loss of individual species, but the end of an entire way of being a predator. Yet their legacy lives on in the deep psychological structures of human fear and fascination. The image of the saber-toothed cat has become one of our most enduring symbols of prehistoric danger, representing a time when humans were not yet the dominant species on Earth. In facing down these perfect killing machines and ultimately driving them to extinction, our ancestors proved that intelligence and cooperation could triumph over even the most sophisticated predatory adaptations nature had ever produced. Chapter 4. King of the Ice Age. In the frozen landscapes of Ice Age Europe and Asia, where woolly mammoths trumpeted across endless tundra and Neanderthals huddled around fires in limestone caves, there prowled a predator so magnificent and terrifying that it earned the title of apex predator across 2 continents. Panther spelea, the cave lion, was not just the largest cat that ever lived. It was the embodiment of feline predation perfected by millions of years of evolution, scaled up to dimensions that would make a modern lion look like a house cat. To truly appreciate the terror that cave lions inspired in our ancestors, we need to understand the world they dominated. This was Pleistocene Europe, a land locked in the grip of alternating ice ages that created some of the harshest environments humans had ever attempted to colonize. Glaciers covered much of northern Europe, while the southern regions consisted of cold steppes and sparse forests populated by megafauna that seemed to belong to an alien world. The cave lion that emerged from this brutal landscape was unlike any cat that exists today, standing 4 feet tall at the shoulder and measuring up to 12 feet from nose to tail. These magnificent predators were roughly 25% larger than the biggest modern lions. Adult males could weigh up to 800 pounds, nearly twice the size of an average African lion. But size was just the beginning of what made cave lions so formidable. Unlike their modern relatives, cave lions were built for hunting in extreme cold and tackling prey that would have been impossible for smaller predators to handle. Their bodies were more robust and heavily muscled than modern lions, with shorter, more powerful limbs adapted for delivering crushing force rather than sustained running. Their skulls were broader and more massive, housing jaw muscles capable of generating bite forces that could crack the thick bones of woolly rhinoceros and cave bears. The name, cave lion, is somewhat misleading, as these cats didn't actually live in caves any more than modern lions live in trees. They received this name because many of their fossils have been found in cave deposits, but this is simply because caves provide ideal conditions for fossil preservation. In life, cave lions were creatures of the open steppes and sparse forests, where they could use their size and power to dominate some of the most challenging hunting grounds on Earth. What made cave lions truly terrifying wasn't just their size, it was their intelligence and adaptability. These cats had to survive in environments where food was scarce and competition was fierce. The steppes of Ice Age Europe were populated by other apex predators, including cave bears that could weigh over a ton, massive cave hyenas with bone-crushing jaws, and packs of wolves that had evolved to work together in taking down megafauna. In this competitive environment, cave lions had to be not just powerful, but smart. Evidence from cave paintings and bone deposits suggests that cave lions were capable of incredibly sophisticated hunting behaviors. They appear to have been able to adapt their hunting strategies to different types of prey, from solitary stalking of large ungulates to coordinated pack hunting of the most dangerous animals of their time. Some cave lion populations seem to have specialized in hunting cave bears, a feat that would have required incredible courage and skill, as adult cave bears were among the most formidable animals that ever lived. The relationship between cave lions and early humans was complex and terrifying. Archaeological evidence shows that humans and cave lions competed for the same cave shelters, leading to direct confrontations that often ended badly for our ancestors. Cave deposits across Europe contain the scattered remains of early humans, showing clear evidence of large cat predation bite marks on skulls, characteristic tooth punctures in bones, and the telltale signs of bodies being dragged and cached by powerful predators. But the most chilling evidence of cave lion predation comes from sites where entire human groups seem to have been wiped out. In some caves, archaeologists have found the remains of multiple individuals scattered in ways that suggest a coordinated attack by one or more large cats. These scenes paint a picture of cave lions that were not only willing to attack humans, but capable of hunting them with deadly efficiency. The cave paintings left by our Paleolithic ancestors provide perhaps the most vivid evidence of the psychological impact cave lions had on early human populations. These ancient artists, working by flickering firelight on cave walls across Europe, created some of the most detailed and accurate depictions of Ice Age animals ever discovered. And among all the animals, they painted mammoths, bison, horses, and dozens of other species. None are rendered with more fear and respect than the cave lions. These paintings show cave lions in remarkable detail, capturing not just their physical appearance, but their behavior and demeanor. The cats are depicted as alert, powerful, and dangerous, often shown in hunting poses or territorial displays. Some paintings even show cave lions attacking other animals, providing us with direct evidence of how our ancestors viewed these predators as the ultimate apex carnivores of their world. One of the most famous cave lion depictions comes from the Chauvet Cave in France, where Paleolithic artists created what may be the most sophisticated animal artwork ever produced by Stone Age humans. The cave lions in these paintings are shown with incredible anatomical accuracy, down to details like muscle definition, facial expressions, and even individual whisker patterns. The fact that our ancestors invested so much time and effort in depicting these cats suggests that they held a place of special significance and terror in the human imagination. The hunting behavior of cave lions would have been particularly terrifying for early humans because of how closely it mirrored human social structures. Like modern lions, cave lions appear to have lived in social groups with complex hierarchies and cooperative hunting strategies. But unlike modern lions, these groups were much larger and more formidable, sometimes containing dozens of individuals working together to bring down the largest prey animals of the Ice Age. Don't imagine being a small band of early humans struggling to survive in the harsh steppes of Ice Age Europe, only to discover that you've wandered into the territory of a cave lion pride. These weren't just individual predators that could be avoided or driven off with fire and loud noises. They were organized, intelligent hunters that could coordinate their attacks, cut off escape routes, and systematically hunt down every member of a human group. The fossil record provides evidence that cave lions were incredibly successful predators that dominated their ecosystems for hundreds of thousands of years. Bone deposits from across their range show that they were capable of taking down virtually any animal they encountered, from the smallest deer to the largest mammoths. Their success was so complete that they may have actually limited the evolution of other large predators in their territories. But cave lions weren't just successful hunters, they were also incredibly adaptable animals that managed to survive multiple climate changes and ice age cycles. As glaciers advanced and retreated across Europe and Asia, cave lion populations shifted their ranges and adapted their hunting strategies to new environments and prey communities. This adaptability made them one of the most widespread and successful predators of their time. The relationship between cave lions and Neanderthals provides some of the most fascinating insights into early human-predator interactions. Neanderthals, with their robust build and sophisticated tool technology, were better equipped to deal with large predators than earlier human species. Archaeological evidence shows that they sometimes successfully hunted cave lions, turning the tables on these apex predators through coordinated group attacks using spears and fire. But the evidence also shows that this relationship was far from one-sided. Neanderthal sites across Europe contain abundant evidence of cave lion predation, including gnawed bones, tooth marks on skulls, and the remains of individuals who clearly fell victim to these massive cats. The constant threat of cave lion attack may have been one of the factors that drove Neanderthal social evolution, forcing them to develop more sophisticated communication, coordination, and defensive strategies. The extinction of cave lions around 14,000 years ago marked the end of an era in human evolution. For hundreds of thousands of years, these magnificent predators have been among the most significant threats faced by human populations across Europe and Asia. Their disappearance coincided with major climate changes at the end of the last ice age, but human hunting pressure and competition for resources certainly played a role in their demise. The legacy of cave lions lives on in human culture and psychology in ways that most people don't realize. Our instinctive fear of large cats, our tendency to see threats in shadows and movement, and even our fascination with feline predators can all be traced back to hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary pressure from creatures like Panthera, Spelaea, and facing down cave lions and ultimately outlasting them. Our ancestors proved that human intelligence and cooperation could triumph over even the most physically imposing predators. But the cost was enormous. Entire human populations were eliminated, and the survivors were shaped by trauma and fear that became embedded in our very DNA. The cave lion may be extinct, but its ghost still haunts the human psyche, reminding us of a time when we were prey rather than predator. Chapter 5. Nightmare from the Nord. As you thought cave lions were terrifying, prepare yourself for something that would have made even those apex predators think twice about entering the wrong territory. Arctidus simus, the short-faced bear, was quite possibly the most dangerous land predator that ever existed in North America. Standing 12 feet tall on its hind legs and weighing up to 2,000 pounds, this wasn't just a bear, it was a living mountain of muscle, claws, and teeth that turned the very concept of being a top predator on its head. The short-faced bear earned its name not because it had a particularly small face, but because its snout was proportionally shorter than that of modern bears. This might seem like a minor anatomical detail, but it actually reveals something terrifying about how this animal was built to kill. That shortened face housed incredibly powerful jaw muscles and a bite force that could crush the skull of a bison with ease. To understand the true horror of encountering a short-faced bear, we need to picture the North American landscape 40,000 years ago. This was a continent in the grip of the last ice age, where massive glaciers covered much of what is now Canada and the northern United States. South of the ice, vast grasslands stretched from coast to coast, populated by herds of megafauna that boggled the modern imagination. Giant ground sloths the size of cars browsed on vegetation. Massive bison with 6-foot horn spans thundered across the plains in herds that stretched to the horizon. American cheetahs, yes. North America had its own cheetahs, raced across the grasslands in pursuit of pronghorn antelopes that could run 70 miles per hour. And dominating all of these magnificent creatures was Arctidus simus, a predator so perfectly designed for killing that it seemed almost supernatural in its capabilities. The short-faced bear was built like no bear that exists today. Modern bears, even the largest grizzlies and polar bears, are generalists that combine predation with omnivorous feeding strategies. They catch fish, hunt mammals, and eat massive quantities of plant matter depending on the season. Their bodies reflect this versatility, powerful but not specifically optimized for any one type of activity. Arctidus simus was different. This was a bear that had abandoned omnivory and specialized completely for predation. Its body was lean and athletic, more like a giant cat than a typical bear. Its legs were incredibly long and powerful, capable of carrying its massive frame at speeds that would have been impossible for other bears. Most estimates suggest that short-faced bears could run at sustained speeds of 40 miles per hour faster than any human could possibly escape. But speed was just one part of the short-faced bear's terrifying arsenal. These bears possessed claws that were essentially biological spears, some reaching lengths of over 6 inches. Unlike the curved claws of modern bears, which are designed for digging and climbing, short-faced bear claws were straighter and more pointed, optimized for slicing through flesh and delivering devastating wounds to prey animals. The skull and teeth of Arctidus simus reveal a predator that had evolved to kill the largest animals of its time. The shortened snout wasn't a limitation. It was an adaptation that allowed for incredibly powerful jaw muscles while maintaining a lightweight, agile head. The teeth were sharp and designed for slicing rather than the grinding molars typical of omnivorous bears. This was a creature built from the ground up for one purpose: killing and eating meat. What made short-faced bears particularly terrifying was their intelligence. Modern bears are already among the most intelligent mammals on Earth, capable of complex problem-solving, learning, and memory. Scale that intelligence up to a 2,000-pound predator with the speed of a horse and the killing tools of a giant cat, and you have something that would have been absolutely unstoppable. The fossil record suggests that short-faced bears were incredibly successful predators that dominated North American ecosystems for hundreds of thousands of years. Their remains have been found from Alaska to Mexico, indicating that they successfully colonized virtually every habitat on the continent. Bone deposits show evidence that they were capable of taking down the largest prey animals of their time, including giant ground sloths, massive bison, and even young mammoths. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of short-faced bear behavior was their apparent willingness to scavenge from and dominate other predators. Evidence suggests that these bears regularly bullied other carnivores away from their kills, using their massive size and aggressive nature to steal food from saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, and other formidable predators. In the hierarchy of Ice Age predators, short-faced bears sat at the very top. For early humans migrating into North America, short-faced bears represented an almost insurmountable obstacle. These were predators specifically adapted for hunting large mammals, and while humans were smaller than their typical prey, they would have been easy targets for animals with such incredible speed and killing power. Archaeological evidence from early American sites tells a sobering story of human-bear interactions. Several sites show evidence of human remains that bear the characteristic marks of bear predation: massive tooth punctures, bones cracked by incredible bite forces, and the scattered distribution patterns typical of bear feeding behavior. Some sites suggest that entire human groups may have been wiped out by short-faced bear attacks. The psychological impact of living alongside such predators cannot be overstated. Imagine being part of a small band of early Americans, having just completed an incredibly dangerous journey across the Bering Land Bridge, only to discover that your new homeland was dominated by predators that could outrun a horse and bite through a tree trunk. The stress of constant vigilance against such threats would have shaped every aspect of early American culture and behavior. The hunting strategies that early Americans developed in response to short-faced bears revealed just how dangerous these animals were. Archaeological sites show evidence of increasingly sophisticated weapons designed specifically for defending against large predators. Spear points became larger and more robust, designed to penetrate thick fur and tough hide. Defensive structures became more elaborate, with evidence of barriers and fortifications that could only have been designed to keep out very large, very dangerous animals. One of the most remarkable aspects of short-faced bear ecology was their apparent lack of hibernation behavior. Modern bears survive harsh winters by entering a state of dormancy that allows them to conserve energy when food is scarce. Short-faced bears, with their completely carnivorous diet and massive energy requirements, couldn't afford to hibernate. They remained active year-round, hunting constantly to fuel their enormous metabolisms. This meant that early humans faced the threat of short-faced bear predation during every season of the year. There was no winter respite when the bears went to sleep, no seasonal reduction in predation pressure. These apex predators were a constant, year-round threat that required permanent vigilance and defensive strategies. The extinction of short-faced bears around 11,000 years ago marked a crucial turning point in North American ecology and human history. The timing of their disappearance coincides almost exactly with the establishment of stable human populations across the continent, and the extinction of much of the megafauna that these bears depended on for food. The relationship between human expansion and short-faced bear extinction was probably complex. Direct hunting of the bears themselves would have been extremely dangerous and likely rare. More probably, human hunting pressure on the large herbivores that formed the bear's primary food source gradually reduced their prey base to unsustainable levels. As the massive bison, ground sloths, and other megafauna disappeared, the short-faced bears found themselves without adequate food sources to support their enormous energy requirements. Climate change at the end of the Ice Age also played a role in short-faced bear extinction. As glaciers retreated and forests expanded across North America, the open grasslands that supported massive herds of megafauna were replaced by woodland, environments that couldn't support the same biomass of large herbivores. The ecosystem that had sustained short-faced bears for hundreds of thousands of years was fundamentally transformed within just a few thousand years. The legacy of short-faced bears in human culture is less obvious than that of other Ice Age predators, but it's no less significant. These bears may have been one of the primary factors that limited early human expansion into North America, acting as a biological barrier that prevented human populations from establishing themselves across the continent until environmental changes finally tipped the balance in favor of our ancestors. The story of short-faced bears also illustrates an important principle about predator-prey relationships. These bears were so specialized for predation, so perfectly adapted for their role as apex carnivores, that they became vulnerable when environmental conditions changed. Their very success as predators ultimately became their weakness when the ecosystem that supported them disappeared. In facing down short-faced bears and ultimately outlasting them, early Americans proved that adaptability and intelligence could triumph over even the most physically imposing predators. But the cost was enormous, and the survivors were shaped by generations of evolutionary pressure from creatures that represented the ultimate expression of mammalian predation. Chapter 6. The pack hunters of a Niger Maori. While individual predators like cave lions and short-faced bears were terrifying enough, perhaps nothing struck more fear into the hearts of our ancestors than the sound that echoed across the Pleistocene landscape at dusk, the haunting howl of a dire wolf pack on the hunt. Canis dirus, the dire wolf, represents one of evolution's most successful experiments in cooperative predation, combining the intelligence of modern wolves with the size and power of a prehistoric killing machine. Dire wolves weren't just bigger versions of modern wolves, they were fundamentally different animals that had evolved specifically to hunt the megafauna that dominated Ice Age America. Standing 3 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 150 pounds, these were wolves built like football players, with massive heads, powerful jaws, and teeth designed for crushing bone rather than just slicing flesh. To understand the terror that dire wolves inspired, we need to picture a pack of 20 or more of these predators working together, with the coordination of a special forces unit and the killing power of a small army. These weren't just individual hunters that happened to work together. They were components of a superorganism, specifically designed for bringing down prey many times larger than any individual pack member. The fossil record reveals that dire wolves were among the most successful predators in North American history. Their remains have been found from coast to coast and from Canada to South America, indicating that they successfully colonized virtually every habitat on both continents. But the most remarkable dire wolf fossil site is the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, where over 4,000 individual dire wolves have been recovered from deposits spanning thousands of years. The La Brea deposits tell an incredible story of predator behavior and ecology. The tar pits functioned as natural traps, where animals that became stuck in the sticky asphalt would struggle and call for help, attracting predators that would then become trapped themselves. The fact that so many dire wolves are found in these deposits suggests that they were incredibly social animals that would risk their own lives to help pack members in distress. But the La Brea wolves also reveal something darker about dire wolf behavior. Many of the skulls show evidence of intraspecific violence, bite marks, and injuries inflicted by other dire wolves. This suggests that competition between packs was incredibly intense, with different groups fighting savage battles over territory and resources. The image of dire wolf packs engaging in organized warfare with each other adds another layer of terror to these already formidable predators. The anatomy of dire wolves reveals animals specifically adapted for pack hunting of megafauna. Their skulls were broader and more robust than those of modern wolves, housing jaw muscles capable of generating bite forces that could crack the leg bones of giant ground sloths and bison. Their teeth were larger and more wear-resistant, designed for a lifetime of crushing bones and processing tough hides. Most remarkably, dire wolves had evolved what paleontologists call hypercarnivorous dentition teeth, specifically designed for processing meat and bone with minimal plant matter in their diet. While modern wolves are omnivores that supplement their diet with fruits, vegetables, and other plant materials, dire wolves were pure carnivores that lived almost exclusively on the flesh of other animals. This dietary specialization had profound implications for dire wolf behavior and ecology. A pack of hypercarnivorous predators weighing 150 pounds each would have required enormous amounts of meat to survive. Estimates suggest that a typical dire wolf pack would have needed to kill and consume a large animal every few days just to meet their basic caloric requirements. This created constant pressure to hunt, making dire wolves some of the most active and persistent predators of their time. The hunting behavior of dire wolves would have been absolutely terrifying to witness. Unlike modern wolves, which typically hunt smaller prey through persistence and exhaustion, dire wolves were built for taking down the largest animals of their time through coordinated pack attacks. They hunted giant ground sloths, massive bison, enormous horses, and even young mammoths, prey animals that weighed many times more than the entire wolf pack combined. Archaeological evidence suggests that dire wolves had evolved incredibly sophisticated pack hunting strategies. Fossil trackways show evidence of coordinated movements, with pack members spreading out to surround and isolate prey animals. Bone deposits reveal evidence of strategic prey selection, with packs targeting old, young, or injured animals that would be easier to bring down while avoiding healthy adults that might fight back effectively. The intelligence required for this level of hunting coordination would have been remarkable. Dire wolves had to be able to communicate complex tactical information, coordinate their movements across large distances, and adapt their strategies based on the behavior of different prey species. This level of cognitive sophistication in a 150-pound predator would have made dire wolves one of the most dangerous threats our ancestors ever faced. For early humans in the Americas, dire wolves represented a uniquely terrifying threat because of how closely their hunting strategies mirrored human social behavior. Both species lived in cooperative groups, communicated through complex vocalizations, used coordinated tactics to achieve common goals, and demonstrated remarkable adaptability in different environments. In many ways, dire wolves were like a dark mirror of human society, what we might have become if we had evolved as pure predators. The fossil record provides chilling evidence of dire wolf predation on early American populations. Several archaeological sites contain human remains, showing the characteristic bite marks and bone damage that could only have been inflicted by large pack-hunting carnivores. Some sites suggest that entire human groups may have been overwhelmed by coordinated dire wolf attacks, but perhaps the most terrifying aspect of dire wolf behavior was their apparent willingness to track and pursue prey over vast distances. Modern wolves are known for their incredible endurance, capable of following prey for miles until exhaustion allows them to make the kill. Dire wolves, with their larger size and more robust build, would have been even more persistent hunters, capable of following human groups for days or weeks until the opportunity for attack presented itself. The psychological warfare aspect of dire wolf hunting cannot be understated. The sound of howling in the distance would have been a constant reminder to early humans that they were being watched, tracked, and evaluated as potential prey. The knowledge that a pack of intelligent, persistent predators might be following just beyond the range of firelight would have created a state of constant stress and paranoia. Archaeological evidence shows that early Americans developed specific strategies for dealing with dire wolf threats. Campsites from this period often show evidence of elaborate defensive structures, circles of sharpened stakes, fire pits positioned to create barriers, and elevated sleeping areas that would have been difficult for wolves to access. These defensive measures represent some of the earliest evidence of human architectural responses to predator pressure. The weapons technology of early Americans also shows clear adaptations for dealing with pack-hunting predators. Spear points became larger and more robust, designed to inflict maximum damage on multiple attackers. Some sites show evidence of specialized anti-predator weapons, including clubs with embedded stone blades that would have been effective against attacking wolves. Social organization among early American populations may have also been influenced by dire wolf pressure. The constant threat of pack attack would have favored larger human groups that could provide better defense against coordinated predators. This may have accelerated the development of complex social structures and communication systems that allowed larger groups to function effectively. The extinction of dire wolves around 10,000 years ago coincides almost exactly with the end of the Ice Age and the disappearance of most North American megafauna. Like many other specialized predators of the Pleistocene, dire wolves were victims of their own success. Their evolution as hypercarnivorous pack hunters made them incredibly effective at hunting megafauna, but it also made them vulnerable when those prey species began to disappear. The relationship between human expansion and dire wolf extinction was probably complex and multifaceted. Direct competition for prey resources certainly played a role, as human hunters became increasingly efficient at killing the same large animals that dire wolves depended on for survival. Human hunting pressure on megafauna prey species would have reduced the food base available to support large predator populations. Climate change at the end of the Ice Age also fundamentally altered the ecosystems that had supported dire wolves for hundreds of thousands of years. As forests replaced grasslands and smaller, more agile prey species replaced a massive megafauna, the ecological niche that dire wolves had evolved to fill simply disappeared. But there may have been a more direct human role in dire wolf extinction. Unlike some other megafauna predators, dire wolves posed an ongoing threat to human populations even after the megafauna began to disappear. These intelligent, adaptable predators might have been capable of switching to human prey as their traditional food sources became scarce. This would have created strong selective pressure for humans to actively hunt and eliminate dire wolf populations rather than simply competing with them for resources. The legacy of dire wolves in human culture and psychology is profound and enduring. Our instinctive fear of pack-hunting predators, our tendency to associate wolf howls with danger and death, and our cultural fascination with werewolves and other lupine monsters can all be traced back to hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary pressure from predators like Canis dirus. The dire wolf also represents an important lesson about the relationship between specialization and survival. These predators were so perfectly adapted for their role as megafauna hunters that they became unable to adapt when environmental conditions changed. Their very success as pack hunters ultimately became their weakness when the ecosystem that supported them disappeared. In facing down dire wolves and ultimately outlasting them, our ancestors proved once again that human intelligence and adaptability could triumph over even the most sophisticated predatory strategies. But the cost was enormous, and the psychological scars left by generations of wolf predation continue to influence human behavior and culture to this day. Chapter 7. Scavengers of diets. When most people think of prehistoric predators, they imagine the spectacular killing machines like saber-toothed cats and cave lions. But lurking in the shadows of these apex predators was something even more sinister. A creature that combined the intelligence of a primate with the bone-crushing power of an industrial compactor and the social coordination of a wolf pack. The giant hyenas of the Pleistocene weren't just scavengers waiting for scraps. They were active predators and bone crushers that could turn a human skeleton into powder in minutes. Crocuta spelea, the cave hyena, was the European cousin of the modern spotted hyena, but scaled up to nightmarish proportions. Standing 3 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 200 pounds, these were hyenas built like compact tanks, with massive heads that housed some of the most powerful jaws in the animal kingdom. But size was just the beginning of what made these creatures so terrifying. To understand the true horror of giant hyenas, we need to appreciate what modern spotted hyenas are capable of. Then imagine that scaled up and made even more formidable by millions of years of additional evolution. Modern spotted hyenas have bite forces that exceed those of lions and tigers, capable of crushing bones that would break the teeth of other predators. They're also incredibly intelligent, with complex social structures that rival those of primates. Cave hyenas took all of these characteristics and amplified them to extreme levels. Their skulls were massively built, with sagittal crests, bony ridges along the top of the skull that provided attachment points for jaw muscles of incredible size and power. These muscles could generate bite forces estimated at over 2,000 pounds per square inch, enough to crack the femur of a woolly mammoth or crush a human skull like an eggshell. But what made cave hyenas truly terrifying wasn't just their individual capabilities, it was their social behavior. Like modern spotted hyenas, cave hyenas lived in large clans that could number in the dozens. These weren't just loose associations of individuals, but highly organized social groups with complex hierarchies, sophisticated communication systems, and coordinated hunting strategies that rivaled those of wolves. The fossil record provides abundant evidence of cave hyena social behavior and hunting success. Cave deposits across Europe contain massive bone accumulations that show clear evidence of hyena processing bones cracked open for marrow, skulls crushed to access brain tissue, and the characteristic spiral fractures that result from hyena feeding behavior. Some of these bone deposits contain the remains of hundreds of animals, suggesting that cave hyena clans were incredibly successful predators that dominated there ecosystems. But perhaps the most chilling evidence comes from caves that show signs of human occupation followed by hyena denning. These sites tell a story of direct competition between humans and hyenas for the same cave shelters, with hyenas often emerging as the winners. Archaeological evidence suggests that hyena clans sometimes drove human groups out of their caves, then moved in and used the same spaces as denning sites. The hunting behavior of cave hyenas would have been particularly terrifying because of how it combined the persistence of wolves with the bone-crushing power of bears. Modern spotted hyenas are known for their incredible endurance, capable of pursuing prey for miles until exhaustion allows them to make the kill. Cave hyenas, with their larger size and more robust build, would have been even more persistent hunters. Unlike the quick surgical kills of cats, hyena predation is a prolonged and horrifying process. Hyenas don't kill their prey quickly. They begin eating while the animal is still alive, starting with the soft tissues of the abdomen and working their way through the carcass methodically. For early humans, falling victim to a hyena clan would have meant a slow, agonizing death that could last for hours. The intelligence of cave hyenas made them even more dangerous as adversaries. Modern spotted hyenas demonstrate problem-solving abilities that exceed those of many primates, and they're capable of learning and adapting their behavior based on experience. Cave hyenas would have been able to study human behavior patterns, learn to anticipate human responses, and develop strategies specifically designed for hunting our ancestors. Archaeological evidence suggests that cave hyenas posed a particular threat to human children and elderly individuals. Several sites contain the remains of young humans, showing clear evidence of hyena predation, with the characteristic tooth marks and bone damage that could only have been inflicted by these powerful scavengers. The selective targeting of vulnerable individuals would have created constant stress within early human communities. The territorial behavior of cave hyenas also would have created ongoing conflicts with human populations. Hyena clans maintain large territories that they defend aggressively against intruders, marking boundaries with scent and challenging trespassers with coordinated group attacks. Human groups attempting to cross hyena territory would have faced the prospect of attacks by dozens of coordinated predators working together with military precision. Perhaps, most terrifyingly, cave hyenas appear to have been capable of learning from successful attacks on humans. Sites that show evidence of hyena predation on human remains often also show evidence of repeated attacks over time, suggesting that hyena clans that successfully killed humans would return to the same areas, looking for more victims. This learning behavior would have made certain regions essentially uninhabitable for human populations. The bone-crushing capabilities of cave hyenas had profound implications for early human survival strategies. Unlike other predators that might leave behind some remains that could be recovered for burial or other cultural practices, hyenas would completely destroy human bodies, leaving behind only scattered bone fragments. This would have had devastating psychological effects on surviving community members. The scavenging behavior of cave hyenas also created indirect threats to human populations. These massive scavengers could completely strip a carcass in hours, leaving nothing behind for human scavenging. In environments where successful hunting was rare and scavenging provided important nutritional supplementation, the presence of large hyena clans could have made the difference between survival and starvation for human groups. Cave paintings from across Europe provide evidence of the psychological impact that hyenas had on early human populations. While most cave art focuses on prey animals and successful hunts, some paintings show clear depictions of hyenas, often portrayed in threatening or aggressive poses. The fact that our ancestors felt compelled to create artistic representations of these predators suggests that they held a place of particular fear and respect in the human imagination. The extinction of cave hyenas around 20,000 years ago marked the end of one of the most successful predator lineages in European history. Unlike many other megafauna predators that disappeared at the end of the Ice Age, cave hyenas went extinct somewhat earlier. During the last glacial maximum, when ice sheets reached their greatest extent across Europe, the timing of cave hyena extinction suggests that climate change played a primary role in their disappearance. As glaciers advanced across Europe, the open steppes and grasslands that supported large herbivore populations were replaced by tundra and ice. The megafauna that formed the primary food base for cave hyenas either went extinct or migrated to more hospitable regions, leaving the hyena clans without adequate food sources. Human competition may have also contributed to cave hyena extinction. As human populations became more sophisticated and better organized, they would have become increasingly effective competitors for the same cave shelters and food resources that hyenas depended on. The development of more effective weapons and defensive strategies would have gradually shifted the balance of power in favor of human groups. The legacy of cave hyenas in human Culture is less obvious than that of some other prehistoric predators, but it's no less significant. Our cultural associations between hyenas and death, our instinctive revulsion at the sound of hyena laughter, and our tendency to view hyenas as somehow more sinister than other predators can all be traced back to hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary pressure from creatures like Crocuta spelaea. The story of cave hyenas also illustrates an important principle about predator-prey relationships and ecosystem function. These animals served as crucial ecosystem engineers, processing carcasses and recycling nutrients in ways that supported the entire food web. Their bone-crushing capabilities allowed them to extract resources from carcasses that were unavailable to other scavengers, making them keystone species in their ecosystems. In facing down cave hyenas and ultimately outlasting them, our ancestors proved once again that human intelligence and social cooperation could triumph over even the most physically imposing and socially sophisticated predators. But the cost was enormous, and the psychological impact of generations of hyena predation continues to influence human behavior and cultural attitudes toward these remarkable animals. Chapter 8. When Nightmares Take Flight. While most people associate prehistoric terror with mammals and reptiles, some of the most absolutely horrifying predators our ancestors ever faced were actually birds. But these weren't just any birds. They were massive, flightless killing machines that stood over 10 feet tall and possessed beaks that could crack skulls and slice through bones like biological machetes. The terror birds, or ferocious, represent one of evolution's most successful experiments in avian predation, and encountering one would have been like facing a dinosaur that had somehow survived into the age of mammals. To understand the sheer nightmare of terror birds, we need to travel to South America during the Cenozoic era, when that continent was an isolated island populated by some of the most bizarre and dangerous animals ever to evolve. Cut off from the rest of the world for millions of years, South America developed its own unique ecosystem where birds, rather than mammals, evolved to fill the role of apex predators. The largest and most terrifying of these was Titanus walleri, a terror bird that stood over 8 feet tall and weighed up to 330 pounds. But size was just the beginning of what made these creatures so formidable. Terror birds possessed anatomical features that seemed specifically designed to inspire fear in any mammal unfortunate enough to encounter them. The most obvious weapon in the terror bird arsenal was their massive beak-curved, razor-sharp blade that could measure over a foot long in the largest species. This wasn't just a big beak. It was a precision-killing instrument with serrated edges that could slice through flesh and bone with surgical precision. The beak was also incredibly strong, capable of delivering crushing blows that could shatter the skull of even large prey animals. But the true horror of terror bird anatomy lay in how their entire body was optimized for predation. Their necks were incredibly long and flexible, allowing them to strike like a serpent while keeping their body at a safe distance from struggling prey. Their legs were massively muscled and equipped with talons that functioned like biological spears, capable of pinning down victims while the beak delivered the killing blow. Most terrifyingly, terror birds were built for speed. Despite their enormous size, these predators could run at speeds of up to 40 miles per hour, making them faster than any human could possibly escape. Imagine a creature the size of a grizzly bear that could outrun a racehorse while wielding a sword for a face. That's the reality of what terror birds represented to any potential prey. The hunting strategy of terror birds was both simple and absolutely horrifying. Using their incredible speed, they would chase down prey animals in open pursuit, then use their powerful legs to pin the victim to the ground while their massive beak delivered precise, devastating strikes to vital organs. The entire attack sequence would have been over in seconds, leaving behind a scene of carnage that would have traumatized any human witnesses. Archaeological evidence suggests that terror birds were incredibly successful predators that dominated South American ecosystems for over 50 million years. Their fossils have been found across the continent, from Argentina to Venezuela, indicating that they successfully colonized virtually every habitat from tropical forests to open grasslands. Bone deposits show evidence that they were capable of taking down prey animals much larger than themselves, including giant ground sloths and primitive horses. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of terror bird evolution was their intelligence. Birds are already among the most intelligent animals on Earth, with cognitive abilities that rival those of mammals. Terror birds, with their large brains and complex hunting behaviors, would have been incredibly smart predators capable of learning, planning, and adapting their strategies based on experience. The fossil record provides evidence that some terror bird species were social hunters that worked together in coordinated packs. Trackways preserved in ancient lake beds show multiple individuals moving together in formation, suggesting that they may have used sophisticated group hunting tactics to bring down the largest prey animals. The image of a pack of 8-foot-tall, predatory birds working together with military precision is the stuff of pure nightmare. For early humans who eventually reached South America, terror birds represented a completely alien threat, unlike anything their ancestors had encountered. These weren't mammals with predictable behaviors and familiar anatomical structures. They were essentially living dinosaurs with intelligence levels that approached those of primates and killing capabilities that exceeded those of any mammalian predator. The psychological impact of terror bird encounters would have been devastating. The sight of a massive, flightless bird running at 40 miles per hour with a sword-like beak aimed at your head would have challenged every assumption about what animals were supposed to look like and how they were supposed to behave. These creatures would have seemed almost supernatural in their alienness. Archaeological sites from early South American human populations show evidence of defensive strategies specifically designed to deal with large avian predators. Spear points from this period often show design modifications that would have been particularly effective against birds lighter, more maneuverable weapons that could be used to target the relatively vulnerable neck and head regions that birds presented during attacks. The extinction of most terror bird species around 2 million years ago coincides with the formation of the Panamanian land bridge that connected South America to North America. This geological event allowed northern predators like saber-toothed cats and bears to migrate south, while southern species could move north. The resulting competition and ecosystem disruption led to what paleontologists call the Great American Biotic Interchange. Terror birds were among the casualties of this interchange, unable to compete effectively with the mammalian predators that had evolved more sophisticated hunting strategies and social behaviors. However, some terror bird lineages survived much longer, with the last known species going extinct only around 15,000 years ago, well within the time frame of human presence in South America. This timing raises intriguing questions about the role that human hunting pressure may have played in terror bird extinction. Unlike the gradual climate-driven extinctions that affected many other prehistoric predators, the disappearance of the last terror birds was relatively sudden and coincides closely with the expansion of human populations across South America. The few terror bird species that survived the biotic interchange would have posed ongoing threats to early human populations. These were still massive, intelligent predators perfectly adapted for hunting mammals in open environments. The development of effective defensive strategies against such alien threats would have required unprecedented levels of innovation and cooperation among early South American peoples. The legacy of terror birds in human culture is less prominent than that of mammalian predators. but their influence can still be seen in indigenous South American folklore and mythology. Many cultures have legends of giant birds that could carry off humans, stories that may represent cultural memories of encounters with the last surviving terror birds. The story of terror birds also illustrates an important principle about evolution and extinction. These predators were incredibly successful for millions of years, dominating their ecosystems and evolving into some of the most efficient killing machines ever created. However, their very specialization as avian predators made them vulnerable when faced with competition from mammalian predators that had evolved different but equally effective hunting strategies in facing down terror birds and ultimately outlasting them. Our ancestors encountered and overcame perhaps the most alien threat they ever faced. These weren't just big mammals with familiar behaviors. They were evolutionary experiments from an isolated continent, creatures that challenged every assumption about what predators could be. The fact that humans eventually colonized South America despite the presence of such formidable avian predators speaks to the incredible adaptability and courage of our prehistoric ancestors. The terror birds represent a reminder that evolution can produce solutions to the challenge of predation that are far stranger and more terrifying than anything our imaginations might conjure. In a world where birds could evolve into 10-foot-tall killing machines, the survival of early human populations required not just courage and intelligence, but the ability to adapt to threats that were literally unlike anything that had ever existed before. Chapter 9. Australia's impossible Pierida are in the prehistoric landscape of Australia, where giant lizards and massive flightless birds already made survival a daily challenge. Evolution produced something that seemed almost designed to violate every rule about what predators were supposed to look like. Thylacoleo carnifex, the marsupial lion, wasn't actually a lion at all. It was a marsupial that had independently evolved many of the same predatory adaptations as the great cats, but with a few improvements that made it even more terrifying than anything that had ever stalked the savannas of Africa. To understand the true horror of the marsupial lion, we need to appreciate just how alien this creature was. Imagine a predator the size of a leopard, but built like a tank, with retractable claws longer than switchblades, teeth that could slice through bone like butter, and the ability to climb trees while carrying prey animals larger than itself. Then add the intelligence of a primate and the patience of a crocodile, and you begin to get a sense of what made Thylacoleo one of the most formidable predators that ever existed. The marsupial lion stood about 30 inches tall at the shoulder and weighed between 220 and 350 pounds, making it roughly comparable in size to a modern leopard or jaguar. But size comparisons are misleading because the marsupial lion was built completely differently from any modern predator. Its body was incredibly robust and muscular, more like a bear than a cat, but with proportions that suggested explosive power rather than the endurance-based hunting style of modern bears. What truly set the marsupial lion apart was its incredible forelimbs. These weren't just strong arms. They were biological grappling hooks equipped with the largest retractable claws of any predator that ever lived. The thumb claw alone could reach lengths of over 6 inches, creating a curved talon that functioned like a biological ice pick. These claws weren't just used for climbing. They were precision weapons designed for delivering devastating wounds to prey animals. The skull and teeth of Thylacoleo reveal a predator that had solved the challenge of killing in a completely unique way. Instead of the long canine teeth typical of most mammalian predators, the marsupial lion had evolved massive incisors and premolars that functioned like biological bolt cutters. These teeth could slice through the largest bones with ease, allowing the marsupial lion to access nutritious marrow that was unavailable to other predators. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of marsupial lion anatomy was the evidence for their climbing ability. Analysis of their limb bones and claw structure suggests that these predators were capable of climbing trees while carrying prey, animals that weighed as much as they did. Imagine a 300-pound predator dropping out of a tree onto unsuspecting prey below. It would have been like being attacked by a furry guided missile equipped with switchblades. The hunting strategy of marsupial lions appears to have been based on ambush predation from elevated positions. Unlike modern big cats, which typically hunt from ground level, marsupial lions could use Australia's unique forest environments to their advantage, positioning themselves in trees and rocky outcrops where they could observe potential prey while remaining completely hidden. The fossil record provides chilling evidence of marsupial lion predation success. Cave deposits across Australia contain the remains of numerous large animals, showing the characteristic claw marks and bite damage that could only have been inflicted by thylacoleo. These predators were capable of taking down prey much larger than themselves, including giant kangaroos, massive wombats, and even other predators. Archaeological evidence suggests that marsupial lions posed a significant threat to early Aboriginal Australian populations. Several sites contain human remains showing evidence of large predator attacks, with damage patterns consistent with marsupial lion predation. The combination of climbing ability, enormous claws, and bone-cutting teeth would have made these predators particularly dangerous to humans who sought safety in trees or rocky shelters. The intelligence of marsupial lions may have been their most dangerous characteristic. Marsupials, as a group, demonstrate remarkable cognitive abilities, and the marsupial lion's brain was large relative to its body size. These predators would have been capable of complex problem-solving, learning from experience and adapting their hunting strategies based on the behavior of different prey species. The extinction of marsupial lions around 30,000 years ago coincides closely with the arrival of humans in Australia and the beginning of widespread megafauna extinctions across the continent. While climate change certainly played a role in these extinctions, the timing suggests that human activities were a significant factor in the disappearance of these remarkable predators. The relationship between humans and marsupial lions would have been particularly complex because both species occupied similar ecological niches. Both were intelligent, adaptable predators that used tools, claws and teeth for marsupial lions, stone tools and fire for humans to hunt large prey animals. This overlap would have created intense competition for resources and territory. Unlike some other prehistoric predators that humans can avoid through careful habitat selection, marsupial lions posed a threat in virtually every environment that early Australians needed to exploit. These predators were equally at home in forests, grasslands, and rocky terrain, making it impossible for human populations to simply avoid areas where marsupial lions lived. The defensive strategies that Aboriginal Australians developed in response to marsupial lion threats can still be seen in traditional hunting and camping practices. The use of elevated sleeping platforms, the construction of shelters in locations that couldn't be approached from above, and the development of weapons specifically designed for close-quarters combat all suggest adaptations to predators that could attack from unexpected angles. Aboriginal folklore contains numerous references to large, predatory marsupials that match the description of thylacoleo remarkably closely. These stories speak of creatures that could climb like possums but killed like lions, animals that combine the stealth of ambush predators with the power of large carnivores. The persistence of these stories in oral traditions suggests that cultural memories of marsupial lion encounters were passed down through many generations. The study of marsupial lion extinction provides important insights into the broader pattern of megafauna disappearances that occurred across Australia during the late Pleistocene. Unlike the gradual climate-driven extinctions that affected many other continents, Australian megafauna extinctions were relatively rapid and coincided closely with human arrival and the spread of human-controlled fire across the landscape. The marsupial lion's reliance on forest and woodland habitats made it particularly vulnerable to the landscape-scale burning practices that Aboriginal Australians used to manage their environment. As humans altered vegetation patterns across the continent, the dense forests that marsupial lions depended on for their ambush hunting strategies would have been replaced by more open environments that favored different types of predators and prey. The loss of the marsupial lion represents one of the most significant ecological changes in Australian history. These predators had been keystone species in their ecosystems for millions of years, controlling herbivore populations and influencing vegetation patterns through their predation pressure. Their extinction would have cascaded through entire food webs, contributing to further changes in ecosystem structure and function. In facing down marsupial lions and ultimately outlasting them, Aboriginal Australians encountered and overcame one of the most uniquely challenging predators that humans have ever faced. These weren't just big cats with familiar behaviors. They were evolutionary experiments that combined the best features of multiple predator types into a single, incredibly dangerous package. The legacy of marsupial lions in human culture extends beyond Australia to influence our broader understanding of what predators can be. These animals demonstrated that evolution can produce solutions to the challenge of predation that are far more creative and terrifying than anything found among modern fauna. They remind us that the natural world is capable of producing creatures that challenge our assumptions about the limits of biological design. The story of marsupial lions also illustrates the profound impact that human activities can have on ecosystems. Even when human populations are relatively small and technologically simple, the extinction of these remarkable predators was probably not the result of direct hunting, but rather the indirect consequence of human-induced changes to habitat and prey availability. In surviving the marsupial lion and the many other unique predators of prehistoric Australia, our ancestors demonstrated the incredible adaptability that has allowed humans to colonize every continent and dominate ecosystems worldwide. But that success came at an enormous cost: the loss of some of the most remarkable animals that ever lived, creatures that will never again stalk through the Australian landscape. Chapter 10: How we became the apex predator after millions of years of being hunted, stalked, and terrorized by some of the most formidable predators ever to walk the earth. Something remarkable happened in human evolution. We stopped being prey and became predators ourselves. Not just any predators, but the most successful and dominant predators the planet has ever known. The transformation from cowering victims to apex hunters didn't happen overnight. But when it did, it fundamentally changed the balance of power on Earth forever. The key to understanding humanity's rise to dominance lies in recognizing that we didn't beat these prehistoric monsters through brute force or natural weapons. We had no claws, no fangs, no venom, and no natural armor. What we had was something far more powerful: intelligence, cooperation, and the ability to transform our environment through technology. These advantages allowed us to not just survive encounters with megafauna predators, but to systematically hunt them to extinction. The first and most crucial weapon in humanity's arsenal was fire. The control of fire, which began at least 400,000 years ago and possibly much earlier, gave our ancestors a tool that no other animal possessed. Fire wasn't just useful for cooking food and staying warm. It was a weapon of mass destruction that could transform entire landscapes and control the behavior of even the largest predators. Early humans quickly learned that fire could be used defensively to create barriers that most predators wouldn't cross. A ring of fires around a campsite could keep cave lions, dire wolves, and short-faced bears at bay, providing safe spaces where human groups could rest, eat, and plan without constant fear of attack. But fire could also be used offensively as a tool for herding animals and controlling their movements during hunts. The psychological impact of fire on prehistoric predators cannot be overstated. These animals had no evolutionary experience with human-controlled fire, and their instinctive fear of flames gave humans a massive advantage in any confrontation. Even the largest and most aggressive predators would retreat when faced with burning torches or flaming spears, allowing human groups to drive them away from kill sites or force them out of desirable territories. But fire was just the beginning of human technological innovation. The development of sophisticated stone tools gave our ancestors weapons that could inflict damage far beyond what their natural physiology allowed. Early spear points and cutting tools were crude by modern standards, but they represented a fundamental shift in the predator-prey dynamic. For the first time, humans could kill at a distance and inflict wounds that would have been impossible with hands and teeth alone. The evolution of projectile weapons was particularly revolutionary. The development of spear throwers and eventually bows and arrows gave humans the ability to kill large animals from safe distances, reducing the risk of injury during hunts while dramatically increasing hunting success rates. A coordinated group of humans armed with projectile weapons could bring down prey animals that would have been impossible to kill through direct confrontation. Perhaps most importantly, humans developed the ability to work together in ways that no other species could match. While some prehistoric predators like dire wolves and cave hyenas were social hunters, human cooperation reached levels of sophistication that were unprecedented in the animal kingdom. Humans could communicate complex tactical information, coordinate movements across large distances, and adapt their strategies in real time based on changing circumstances. This social cooperation allowed human groups to tackle prey animals that were far larger and more dangerous than anything individual humans could handle. Coordinated hunts involving dozens of individuals could surround and systematically kill even the largest megafauna, from woolly mammoths to giant ground sloths. The ability to share information between groups also meant that successful hunting techniques could spread rapidly across entire populations. The development of language was crucial to this cooperative hunting success. Complex vocalizations allowed human hunters to coordinate their movements, share information about animal behavior, and plan sophisticated multi-stage hunts that could take place over days or weeks. Language also enabled the transmission of hunting knowledge between generations, allowing each new cohort of hunters to benefit from the accumulated experience of their ancestors. Archaeological evidence from sites across the globe tells the story of increasingly sophisticated human hunting techniques. Early sites show evidence of opportunistic scavenging and simple hunting of small animals. But as technology and cooperation evolved, human groups became capable of taking on increasingly large and dangerous prey. Kill sites from the later Pleistocene show evidence of mass hunting events where entire herds of megafauna were systematically slaughtered. These weren't just opportunistic encounters. They were carefully planned operations that required detailed knowledge of animal behavior, sophisticated coordination between hunters, and technological innovations that allowed humans to process enormous quantities of meat and other resources. The psychological warfare aspect of human hunting was also crucial to our success. Unlike other predators that rely primarily on physical prowess, humans developed the ability to terrorize prey animals through persistent harassment, landscape modification, and the systematic elimination of escape routes. Human groups could follow herds for weeks, creating constant stress that weakened animals and made them vulnerable to attack. The use of environmental modification as a hunting tool was particularly innovative. Humans learned to use fire to alter vegetation patterns, creating grasslands that favored certain types of prey while eliminating forest cover that predators needed for ambush hunting. They dug pit traps, built corrals and drive lines, and modified water sources to concentrate animals in areas where they could be easily killed. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of human hunting success was our ability to learn from and adapt to the behavior of the predators that had once hunted us. Humans studied the hunting techniques of wolves and learned to hunt in coordinated packs. They observed the ambush strategies of cats and developed their own versions of stealth hunting. They analyzed the social behaviors of hyenas and applied similar coordination techniques to their own hunting groups. This ability to learn from other predators and incorporate their techniques into human hunting strategies gave our ancestors access to the accumulated evolutionary wisdom of millions of years of predator evolution. Humans became a kind of super predator that combined the best hunting techniques of all other predators into a single, incredibly effective package. The impact of human hunting on megafauna populations was devastating and relatively rapid. Archaeological evidence shows that human arrival in new regions was consistently followed by waves of megafauna extinctions. This pattern holds true across continents and time periods, from the human colonization of Australia 50,000 years ago to the settlement of Madagascar just 2,000 years ago. The extinction of megafauna predators was particularly rapid because these animals faced a double threat from human expansion. Not only were they competing with humans for the same prey resources, but they were also being actively hunted by human groups that viewed them as threats to be eliminated. Large predators that had dominated ecosystems for millions of years found themselves unable to compete with human hunters who could coordinate attacks, use projectile weapons, and employ fire as a tactical advantage. The psychological impact of watching their traditional prey disappear and being systematically hunted by intelligent, tool-using bipeds would have been devastating for surviving predator populations. These animals had no evolutionary experience with threats like humans, and their instinctive behaviors were often counterproductive. When dealing with human hunters, the transformation of humans from prey to predator also had profound effects on human psychology and social organization. The constant threat of predation that had shaped human evolution for millions of years was gradually replaced by the challenges of coordinating complex hunts, processing large quantities of resources, and managing conflicts within increasingly large and sophisticated social groups. The success of human hunting led to rapid population growth and territorial expansion. Groups that mastered advanced hunting techniques could support larger populations and expand into new territories with confidence. This created a positive feedback loop where successful hunting led to larger groups, which enabled even more sophisticated hunting techniques and further territorial expansion. But the elimination of megafauna predators also created new challenges for human societies. These animals had been keystone species that played crucial roles in maintaining ecosystem balance. Their disappearance led to cascading changes in vegetation patterns, herbivore populations, and overall ecosystem structure that humans had to adapt to and manage. The loss of large predators also meant that humans had to take on many of the ecological roles that these animals had previously filled. Human hunters became the primary regulators of herbivore populations, and human land management practices replaced the ecosystem engineering that large predators had provided through their hunting activities. In the span of just a few tens of thousands of years, humans had transformed from vulnerable prey animals into the dominant predators on Earth. This transformation was so complete and successful that it fundamentally altered the trajectory of life on our planet. The age of megafauna was over, and the age of human dominance had begun. The legacy of this transformation continues to shape human behavior and psychology today. Our fascination with hunting, our competitive instincts, and our tendency to form cooperative groups all reflect the evolutionary pressures that shaped our ancestors during their rise to predatory dominance. In becoming the ultimate predators, humans didn't just survive the most dangerous creatures that ever lived, we eliminated them entirely, inheriting the Earth through intelligence, cooperation, and technological innovation. Chapter 11. Final encounters with giants. As the Ice Age drew to a close and human populations established themselves across the globe, the final chapters of the megafauna story were being written in blood and extinction. But these weren't quiet disappearances into the fossil record. They were dramatic last stands, where some of the most magnificent and terrifying creatures ever to walk the earth made their final desperate attempts to survive in a world increasingly dominated by human intelligence and technology. The end of the Pleistocene, roughly 12,000 years ago, marked one of the most dramatic extinction events in Earth's history. In just a few thousand years, a blink of an eye in geological terms, approximately 70% of all large mammal species vanished forever. This wasn't a gradual decline spread out over millions of years like previous mass extinctions. This was rapid, widespread, and devastating, coinciding almost perfectly with the global expansion of human populations. Some of the most poignant evidence of these final encounters comes from archaeological sites where human artifacts are found directly associated with the remains of extinct megafauna. These sites tell stories of desperate battles between human hunters and the last surviving giants, conflicts where the outcome would determine whether entire species lived or died. At the Blackwater Draw site in New Mexico, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of what may have been one of the last mammoth hunts in North America. Clovis spear points, some of the most sophisticated projectile weapons ever created by Paleolithic peoples, are found embedded in mammoth bones, telling the story of a successful hunt that took place around 11,000 years ago. But this wasn't just any mammoth hunt. Radiocarbon dating suggests that this may have been one of the very last woolly mammoths to be killed by humans in North America. The Clovis people had perfected the art of mammoth hunting to an almost industrial level. Their spear points were masterpieces of stone tool technology, designed specifically for penetrating the thick hide and massive bones of proboscideans. These weapons could punch through mammoth skin like bullets, delivering wounds that would cause rapid blood loss and eventual death, even in the largest individuals. But the mammoth hunters weren't just technologically advanced, they were also incredibly sophisticated in their understanding of mammoth behavior and anatomy. Clovis kill sites show evidence of precise knowledge about mammoth social structure, with hunters specifically targeting matriarchs and other key individuals whose deaths would disrupt entire herds. They knew exactly where to place spear thrusts to hit vital organs, and they had developed techniques for efficiently processing carcasses that weighed several tons. The psychological impact on surviving mammoth populations would have been devastating. These intelligent animals, with their complex social structures and long memories, would have learned to fear the two-legged predators that killed with such efficiency. The stress of constant hunting pressure, combined with climate change and habitat loss, created a perfect storm that even the most adaptable giants couldn't survive. In Europe, the last cave bears were making their final stand in the deepest caves of the Alps and Carpathians. These massive omnivores, some weighing over a ton, had survived multiple ice ages and climate changes over hundreds of thousands of years. But they couldn't survive the combination of human competition for cave shelters and the systematic hunting pressure that human groups were applying to all large animals. Archaeological evidence from European caves tells a story of direct competition between humans and cave bears for the same shelters. Some caves show evidence of alternating occupation. Humans would move in during the summer months, only to be displaced by bears returning for winter hibernation. But gradually, human occupation became more permanent, and bear populations began to decline. The final cave bear populations were reduced to the most remote and inaccessible caves, places where humans rarely ventured. But even these last refuges couldn't protect them from the broader ecosystem changes that human activities were causing. The extinction of cave bears around 24,000 years ago marked the end of one of Europe's most iconic megafauna species out in Australia. The last megalania may have survived longer than previously thought. Aboriginal oral traditions contained stories of giant lizards that could be interpreted as cultural memories of encounters with these massive monitor lizards. Some of these stories describe specific hunting techniques used to kill giant reptiles, suggesting that early Aboriginal Australians may have actively hunted the last surviving megalania populations. The hunting of giant lizards would have required incredible courage and sophisticated tactics. These were predators that could easily kill multiple humans in a single encounter, equipped with venom that could cause death through blood loss, even if the victim escaped the initial attack. Aboriginal hunters would have needed to develop weapons and strategies specifically designed for dealing with such dangerous prey. Some Aboriginal rock art sites contain depictions that may represent giant monitor lizards, showing animals much larger than any modern Australian reptiles. These artistic representations, combined with oral traditions and the timing of megalania extinction, suggest that the last giant lizards may have survived until as recently as 40,000 years ago. While within the period of human presence in Australia, the extinction of terrorbirds in South America provides another example of the complex interactions between humans and megafauna during the end Pleistocene extinctions. The last terrorbird species, Titanus walleri, survived until around 15,000 years ago in North America, where it would have encountered some of the most sophisticated Paleo-Indian hunting cultures. These encounters between human hunters and 8-foot-tall predatory birds would have been unlike anything else in the prehistoric world. Terror birds were unlike any predator that humans had previously encountered. They combined the speed and agility of cursorial hunters with the intelligence and problem-solving abilities of modern birds. Hunting such creatures would have required completely new tactical approaches. Archaeological evidence suggests that Paleo-Indian groups developed specialized weapons and techniques for dealing with large avian predators. Some spear points from this period show design features that would have been particularly effective against birds' lighter weight for improved accuracy and specialized hafting. That would prevent the weapon from being lost if the bird escaped after being wounded. The extinction of short-faced bears in North America around 11,000 years ago coincides closely with the spread of Clovis hunting technology across the continent. These massive predators, standing 12 feet tall and weighing up to 2,000 pounds, represented one of the most formidable challenges that human hunters ever faced. The final encounters between humans and short-faced bears would have been epic battles between intelligence and brute force. Short-faced bears were not just scavengers. They were active predators capable of running down prey at speeds of 40 miles per hour. A confrontation between human hunters and such a predator would have required incredible coordination and courage. The humans would have needed to work together to surround and confuse the bear while avoiding its massive claws and bone-crushing jaws. Some kill sites from this period show evidence of what may have been short-faced bear hunting. Broken spear points and scattered bear bones suggest violent encounters where human hunters successfully killed these massive predators, probably at great cost in human lives. The elimination of short-faced bears removed one of the last major obstacles to human dominance of North American ecosystems. The extinction of dire wolves around 10,000 years ago marked the end of the most successful pack-hunting predators in North American history. These intelligent, social carnivores had dominated the continent for hundreds of thousands of years, but they couldn't adapt quickly enough to the changes that human presence brought to their ecosystems. The final dire wolf populations faced a devastating combination of prey loss and direct competition with human hunters. As megafauna herbivores disappeared, dire wolves found themselves without adequate food sources to support their large pack sizes. At the same time, human hunting groups were competing for the same remaining prey animals, creating a situation where neither predator could find enough food to survive. Archaeological evidence suggests that the last dire wolves may have turned to scavenging and even attacking human settlements in their desperation. Some sites show evidence of defensive structures that could only have been designed to keep out large pack-hunting predators. The final confrontations between humans and dire wolves would have been desperate affairs, with both species fighting for survival in a rapidly changing world. The pattern of megafauna extinction that occurred at the end of the Pleistocene represents one of the most dramatic ecological transformations in Earth's history. In just a few thousand years, ecosystems that had been stable for millions of years were completely restructured by the elimination of their largest animals. The loss of these megafauna had cascading effects throughout entire food webs. Without large herbivores to maintain grasslands through their grazing, many regions reverted to forest. Without large predators to control herbivore populations, the remaining smaller animals face new ecological pressures. Without megafauna to transport nutrients across landscapes, soil fertility patterns changed dramatically. Humans have become the dominant force shaping Earth's ecosystems, but they inherited a planet that was fundamentally different from the one their ancestors had evolved in. The world of giants was gone forever, replaced by a human-dominated landscape where our species would face entirely new challenges and opportunities. The story of these final encounters between humans and megafauna is ultimately a story about the power of intelligence and cooperation to overcome even the most formidable physical advantages. Our ancestors faced creatures that were larger, stronger, and often more dangerous than anything alive today. Yet they not only survived these encounters, but emerged victorious. But victory came at a cost. The world that emerged from the end Pleistocene extinctions was impoverished compared to the magnificent ecosystems that had preceded it. The loss of megafauna represented the elimination of millions of years of evolutionary innovation, creativity, and ecological complexity that can never be recovered. In becoming the ultimate predator, humans had fundamentally altered the trajectory of life on Earth. We had inherited the planet not through gentle succession, but through the systematic elimination of our competitors and threats. The age of giants was over, and the age of human dominance had begun, for better and for worse. As we reach the end of our journey through deep time, standing among the bones and memories of the most dangerous predators that ever lived, we find ourselves confronting a profound paradox. The very success of our species in overcoming these prehistoric monsters has left us in a world that is both safer and more impoverished than anything our ancestors could have imagined. Today, as you walk through a modern forest or grassland, you are experiencing an ecosystem that has been fundamentally altered by the actions of your own species. The largest land predators you might encounter are bears, big cats, or wolves. Impressive animals, certainly, but pale shadows of the giants that once ruled the earth. You will never hear the roar of a cave lion echoing through European forests. Never see the massive bulk of a short-faced bear rising on its hind legs. Never witness the terrifying sight of a dire wolf pack coordinating their attack with military precision. This absence is not an accident of evolution or climate change. It is the direct result of our ancestors' success in the ultimate predator-prey arms race. Every major group of large predators that threatened early human populations has been eliminated. either through direct hunting or through the ecosystem-level changes that human activities produced. We live in a world where our species has achieved such complete dominance that we have literally remade the planet in our image. The psychological legacy of our prehistoric battles with megafauna predators continues to shape human behavior in ways that most people never realize. Our instinctive fear of the dark, our tendency to see threats in shadows and peripheral vision, our fascination with horror movies featuring giant monsters, all of these can be traced back to millions of years of evolutionary pressure from predators that could kill us with ease. The hypervigilance that kept our ancestors alive in a world filled with saber-toothed cats and dire wolves now manifests as anxiety disorders in a world where such threats no longer exist. The cooperative instincts that allowed human groups to coordinate defenses against cave bears now drive us to form complex social organizations and compete for resources we don't actually need. The technological innovation that produced the first spear points has escalated into weapons capable of destroying entire ecosystems. We are, in essence, a species that has been shaped by trauma, the collective trauma of hundreds of thousands of years of being hunted by creatures far more physically powerful than ourselves. That trauma drove us to develop the intelligence, cooperation, and technological capacity that eventually made us the dominant species on Earth. But it also left us with psychological and behavioral patterns that are often poorly adapted to the world we've created. The story of how humans overcame the most dangerous predators in Earth's history is ultimately a story about the power of intelligence and cooperation to triumph over seemingly impossible odds. Our ancestors faced creatures that were bigger, stronger, faster, and often more numerous than they were. They had no natural weapons, no thick hide or sharp claws, no venom or natural armor. What they had was the ability to think, plan, communicate, and work together in ways that no other species had ever achieved. But this triumph came at an enormous cost. The elimination of megafauna predators didn't just remove threats to human survival. It eliminated keystone species that had played crucial roles in maintaining ecosystem balance for millions of years. The loss of these animals triggered cascading effects throughout entire food webs, leading to changes in vegetation patterns, nutrient cycling, and overall ecosystem structure that continue to reverberate today. We now live in what many scientists call the Anthropocene, a geological epoch defined by human impact on Earth's systems. This isn't just a recent development driven by industrialization and global warming. The Anthropocene began with the end Pleistocene megafauna extinctions, when human activities first began to reshape ecosystems on a planetary scale. We have been the dominant ecological force on Earth for at least 10,000 years, and possibly much longer. The question facing our species today is whether we can learn to use the same intelligence and cooperation that allowed us to survive the Age of Giants to address the challenges we've created for ourselves. Climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and resource depletion are all consequences of our success as the ultimate predator competitor. These challenges require the same kinds of long-term thinking, sophisticated coordination, and technological innovation that our ancestors used to overcome cave lions and short-faced bears. In many ways, we are still engaged in the same fundamental struggle that shaped our species from the beginning, the fight for survival in a world filled with threats. The difference is that now, most of the threats are our own making. We have become both the ultimate predator and our own most dangerous prey. The extinct giants whose stories we've told serve as reminders of both our incredible capacity for survival and adaptation, and the responsibility that comes with our dominance. These creatures survived ice ages, climate changes, and countless other challenges over millions of years, only to disappear within a few thousand years of human expansion. Their extinction demonstrates both the power of human innovation and the fragility of even the most successful evolutionary lineages. As we face an uncertain future on a planet increasingly shaped by human activities, we would do well to remember the lessons of our prehistoric past. The same traits that allowed our ancestors to survive encounters with the most dangerous predators ever to live: intelligence, cooperation, adaptability, and the willingness to innovate in the face of seemingly impossible challenges are exactly the traits we need to address the environmental and social challenges of the modern world. The age of giants is over, and we are the inheritors of the earth they once ruled. The question is whether we will prove worthy of that inheritance, or whether we will become just another evolutionary experiment that burned too bright and too fast to last. The answer depends on our ability to learn from our past, adapt to our present circumstances, and plan for a future that honors both our remarkable evolutionary journey and our responsibility as the planet's dominant species. In the end, the story of the most dangerous predators humans ever faced is also the story of how we became human. It is a story of courage in the face of overwhelming odds, innovation in response to existential threats, and cooperation in pursuit of common survival. It is a story that reminds us that we are capable of achieving seemingly impossible things when we work together toward common goals. The giants are gone, but their legacy lives on in the genetic, psychological, and cultural structures that define our species. We carry within ourselves the accumulated wisdom of hundreds of thousands of years of survival against the odds. That wisdom is our inheritance from the ancestors who faced down monsters and lived to tell the tale. It is also our gift to the future, the hope that intelligence and cooperation can triumph over any challenge, no matter how daunting it might seem. The hunt is over, the giants are dead, and we have inherited the earth. Now comes the hardest part: learning how to live with the consequences of our success